The coffee cup hit the counter hard enough to make the barista flinch. Not because Marcus Cole meant to put it down that way. He was just tired. The kind of tired that lives behind your eyes and doesn't go away no matter how many hours you sleep. He had been up since 4 a.m. He had made lunches, signed a school form, fixed a broken zipper on a small backpack, and driven across 3 zip codes before the sun was fully up. By the time he walked into the cafe on Clement Street at 12 past noon, he had already done more before lunch than most people do in a full day. He stood at the counter in his brown delivery uniform. The jacket had a logo on the chest. The boots were clean but clearly old. Over his left shoulder he carried a large thermal bag, the kind that keeps food hot for 8 hours. Over his right arm he had a small pink lunchbox with a cartoon rabbit on the front. It belonged to his daughter, Lily. She was 6 years old, and she had forgotten it that morning in the rush to get out the door. Marcus had called ahead to the school. They told him to bring it by during his lunch break. He ordered a black coffee, no sugar. He paid with exact change from his front pocket. The cafe was one of those places that tried very hard to look like it was not trying at all. Exposed brick, mismatched chairs, a chalkboard menu with prices that would make your grandmother close her eyes and shake her head slowly. It was the kind of place where certain people came not just to drink coffee, but to be seen drinking coffee. And at the center table, right in the middle of everything, 3 men were doing exactly that. They were in their early 40s, well-dressed, the kind of well-dressed that announces itself. One wore a blazer over a white shirt with no tie, which meant he wanted people to think he was important but relaxed. Another had a watch that caught the light every time he moved his wrist, which was often. The third one, the biggest one, had the kind of laugh that fills a room without asking permission. Marcus did not look at them. He took his coffee to a small table near the window, set the pink lunchbox carefully on the seat beside him, and pulled out his phone. He had 2 rerouted deliveries to reschedule. His afternoon was tight. He started typing. The men at the center table had noticed him the moment he walked in. That was the thing about certain kinds of people. They noticed everyone who didn't look like them. It was not something they thought about. It was just something they did. One of them said something low. The others laughed. The man with the loud laugh looked over at Marcus and then said it again, louder this time. Something about the uniform. Something about the lunchbox. The words were said with a kind of easy cruelty. The kind that comes from never once in your life having to worry about what other people think of you. Marcus did not look up from his phone. He scrolled. He typed. He picked up his coffee and took a slow sip. This is where most people would have expected him to react, to look over, to say something, to let his face show what he was feeling. But Marcus Cole had learned a long time ago that the people who shout the loudest are almost always waiting for a reaction. They feed on it. Without it, they have nothing. So he gave them nothing. The barista, a young woman named Claire who had worked that cafe for 2 years and had seen all kinds of people walk through that door, glanced over at Marcus from behind the counter. She had heard what the men said. She had seen the pink lunchbox. She had watched Marcus not move a single muscle in his face. She felt something tighten in her chest, not fear, something closer to respect. The man with the loud laugh was not done. He pushed his chair back slightly, angling his body toward Marcus's table. He said something about the delivery bag, about how some people were made for some kinds of work. His voice had that particular tone some men use when they want to humiliate someone but want everyone around them to think they were just joking. Marcus set his phone face down on the table. He looked up. Not at the man. He looked out the window, at the street, at a pigeon on the sidewalk pecking at something near a drain. He watched it for a moment, the way you watch something small and harmless when you are deciding how to spend your energy. Then he picked his phone back up and kept typing. The man at the center table waited. His friends watched him. When no reaction came, the laugh faded a little. He said one more thing, quieter this time, more for his friends than for Marcus. Then he turned back to his table. The room settled. Marcus finished his message. He put his phone in his jacket pocket. He looked at the pink lunchbox beside him and straightened it slightly, so the cartoon rabbit faced forward. He finished his coffee in 2 long sips. Then he stood, picked up the lunchbox and the thermal bag, and walked to the counter. Claire was pretending to wipe down the espresso machine. She looked up when he approached. He slid a folded bill across the counter. Not for the coffee. The coffee was already paid for. This was something else. He said, "Keep it." She looked at the bill, then at him. He nodded once, picked up his things, walked to the door. She watched him push out into the afternoon light, cross to a white delivery van parked at the curb, and pull open the driver door. He did not look back at the men inside. He did not need to. She put the bill in her apron pocket. At the center table, one of the men said something. The others laughed again, but it was a smaller laugh than before, the kind of laugh that has lost something it started with. Marcus started the van. He had a delivery to make. After that, he had to drop the lunchbox at Lily's school before the afternoon bell. After that, he had 4 more stops before pickup at 3:15. He pulled into traffic. The radio came on, something quiet and forgettable. He turned it off. He preferred the sound of the city, the way it moved, the rhythm of it. He had learned to read cities the way some people read rooms, quickly and accurately, knowing where the space was and how to move through it. That was a skill that came from somewhere, from years of moving through places where reading your environment was not a preference but a necessity. But that was not something Marcus Cole talked about, not with coworkers, not with neighbors, not with the people at Lily's school who smiled at him at pickup and sometimes asked politely what he did. He told them he drove, which was true. He drove every day. He just didn't tell them what he used to drive toward. He turned onto the avenue. 3 blocks ahead, the school sat behind a black iron fence. He could already see the smaller kids in the yard for lunch recess. He slowed down, looking for the gate. Somewhere in that yard was Lily, probably at the drawing table they set up near the fence on good weather days, probably drawing something that made no logical sense and was somehow the best thing he had ever seen. He found a spot at the curb, got out, walked to the front gate with the pink lunchbox. The woman at the front desk knew him. She had his name in the system. She took the lunchbox with both hands and promised it would get to Lily before the lunch period ended. Marcus thanked her, walked back to the van. He had 6 deliveries left. He checked the next address on his phone, 14 minutes away in light traffic. He put the van in drive. Behind him, the cafe on Clement Street continued its afternoon. The men at the center table ordered another round. Claire served them without a word. She kept her face neutral. She had been doing this job long enough to know which customers were worth her smile, and which ones had already shown her who they were. She knew exactly which kind the men at the center table were. And she knew exactly what she had seen in Marcus Cole's face when he walked out of that door. Not anger, not hurt, not defeat. Something harder than all of those things. Something that had been tested before, in ways she would never fully know, and had not broken. She wiped down the counter. The afternoon crowd began to thin. The men at the center table called for their check. Marcus was already across town, up 4 flights of stairs, handing a package to an older gentleman who tipped him $2 and called him son. He took the $2, said thank you, meant it. Walked back to the van. Next stop. The pink lunchbox reached Lily at 12:47. The teacher set it on her desk during lunch. Lily looked at it. Then she looked at the door, even though she knew her father wasn't there. She opened it and found her sandwich cut in triangles the way she liked, an apple already sliced, and a small folded piece of paper at the bottom. She unfolded it. It said, in handwriting that was careful and straight, "Eat everything. I'll be there at 3:15. Don't be last out the door." She smiled. Ate everything. Was second out the door. Marcus was standing at the curb at 3:14. He was in the same uniform, same boots, same jacket with the logo on the chest. When Lily ran out and grabbed his hand, she did not see any of that. She just saw him, the person who showed up every single day, no exceptions, no matter what the day looked like. She told him about her morning, about a boy in her class who could whistle with 2 fingers, about a painting she made that the teacher put on the wall. He listened to every word. They walked to the van. He helped her up into the passenger seat, buckled her in, went around to the driver's side. She was still talking when he started the engine. He drove home through the late afternoon, through the golden light that falls on cities at that hour and makes everything look briefly like it is exactly where it is supposed to be. He did not think about the men in the cafe. He was already somewhere else entirely. 3 weeks later, Marcus Cole walked back into that cafe. He had not planned to. The cafe was simply the closest place with parking near the school, and he was early for pickup, because his last delivery had gone faster than expected. He ordered a black coffee. He sat at the same table near the window. He did not know that across the city, in a way he would not expect and could not have predicted, the afternoon was about to turn into something neither he nor anyone else in that room would forget. But first, he drank his coffee, and he waited. The men arrived at 12:20. The door opened and the sound came in first. That specific sound, loud and shapeless, the sound of people who have never once in their lives worried about being too much in a space that wasn't built for them. Marcus did not look up from his phone. He was reading a message from Lily's teacher. Lily had asked to present her painting to the class. The teacher wanted to know if Marcus would like to come in for it. He was typing a reply. The three men settled at the center table. Same arrangement, same watches, same blazer, same laugh. It took them 40 seconds to notice Marcus. He counted, not deliberately. The way you count when your body is still running old software, the kind that tracks everything automatically, even when your mind is somewhere else. 40 seconds. Then the murmuring started. Marcus had sat in rooms where the temperature changed when he walked in. He had stood in places where the shift in energy was something you could feel against your skin. He had learned early, in a life that most people in this cafe could not have imagined, to read a room the way you read weather, not what it looked like, what it was about to do. The room was about to do something. He finished typing his reply to the teacher. Yes, he would be there. He would move his afternoon deliveries. He put his phone face down on the table. The man with the loud laugh said something that carried. It was the same energy as 3 weeks ago, the same casual meanness dressed up as humor, something about seeing the same uniform in the same seat, something about regulars. His friends laughed. Marcus picked up his coffee. Across the room, Claire was behind the counter. She had seen Marcus come in. She had seen the other men arrive. She had watched the same scene begin to assemble itself like a storm that has no interest in whether you have an umbrella. She looked toward the back, where Stavros was going over the week's invoices at his small desk near the storage room. Stavros owned the cafe. He had owned it for 19 years. He was 61 years old, heavy in the shoulders, with white hair and hands that looked like they had spent decades doing harder work than adding up numbers on paper. She caught his eye. She did not need to say anything. He had heard. He put down his pen. At the center table, the man with the blazer leaned back in his chair, speaking in a tone designed to travel. He was performing now, not just for his friends but for anyone in the room who might be an audience. He said something about how dedication was admirable, something that sounded almost like a compliment and was absolutely not one, the kind of thing that sounds fine if you read the words in a vacuum, but sounds entirely different when you hear the tone wrapped around them. The man with the watch laughed, said something in agreement, slightly louder. Marcus set his coffee down. He turned in his chair. He looked at the three men directly, not with anger, not with anything that could be called a threat. He just looked, the way you look at something when you are deciding how much of your attention it deserves. The laughing stopped. The man with the loud laugh met Marcus's eyes, and something moved across his face that had not been there before. Not shame. Not yet. Something closer to the first moment of awareness that the person across from you is not what you assumed. Marcus held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds. Then he turned back to the window. It was quiet for a moment. Then the man with the blazer tried to restart the engine. He said something else, quieter this time, more directed, clearly aimed at Marcus's back. It was the kind of thing said when a person realizes they are losing ground and doubles down instead of stepping back. That was when Stavros came out of the back. He walked the length of the cafe without hurrying. He did not raise his voice. He stopped at the side of the center table and looked at the three men. He was not a tall man, but he had the kind of stillness that made the space around him feel smaller. He said, "I need to ask you gentlemen to settle your bill and leave." The man with the blazer looked up. "Excuse me?" "I would like you to leave," Stavros said again. Same tone, same pace. "We come here every week." "I know," Stavros said. "That's going to change today." The man with the watch leaned forward. "On what grounds?" Stavros looked at Marcus for exactly 1 second. Then back at the three men, he said, "Because I decide who is welcome here, and I am telling you that you are not." There was a silence that had weight to it. The man with the loud laugh started to say something. One look from Stavros stopped it in his throat. They paid their bill. They stood. One of them said something on the way out, the last word, the parting shot that small people always need to fire so they can tell themselves they didn't lose. The door closed behind them. The cafe was quiet. Claire let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. She looked at Stavros. He was already walking back toward his desk in the back. He paused beside Marcus's table. Marcus looked up. Stavros said nothing for a moment. Then, "Your coffee is on the house, today and going forward." Marcus looked at him. "You don't have to do that." "I know," Stavros said. "That's why I'm doing it." He went back to his desk. Marcus looked out the window. The afternoon moved on the street outside. A woman walked a dog. Two children argued about something on the steps of the building across the road. A delivery truck from a different company double-parked at the corner. Hazards on, driver jumping out with a package under each arm. Marcus watched all of it. He was thinking about Lily, about the painting on the classroom wall, about whether he could shift his Wednesday deliveries to make room for the school visit on Thursday. He finished his coffee, left a tip that was larger than it needed to be, walked out into the afternoon, got in the van, and drove. What the three men did not know, what no one in that cafe except Stavros had yet worked out, was that Marcus Cole was not simply a delivery driver who had once been in the military. That kind of description fits thousands of people. That kind of description does not come close to capturing what Marcus had actually been. He had enlisted at 19. Quiet kid from a mid-sized city in Ohio. Good grades, not great. Ran track. Fixed things with his hands. He had a talent for staying calm under pressure that his coaches noticed but could never fully explain. He just didn't rattle. When things went wrong around him, he slowed down instead of speeding up. He thought more clearly when the noise increased. It was as if his brain worked differently in those moments, ran cooler and sharper when everything else was heating up. The military noticed that talent almost immediately. After basic training, after infantry school, after 2 deployments that were notable for how effectively his unit performed in conditions that broke other units down, he was recommended for assessment. He did not talk about what happened during that process. He still did not. Not because he was told not to, because it was not something that translated into ordinary conversation. What it had made him was this: a man who had been trained, at a level that most people do not know exists, to read situations, to hold his body still while his mind moved fast, to make decisions in fractions of seconds that other people might take minutes to process, to remain calm not because the situation did not matter, but because calm was the only state in which he could be fully effective. He had used those skills in places most people will never see, doing things that are never on the news, in service of people who never knew his name. And now he used them to deliver packages, to navigate traffic, to predict which elevator in a building was faster, to estimate, before he even got to the door, whether the recipient was home by reading the light in the window. He had left the service when Lily was 8 months old, and her mother, a woman named Diane, had looked at him across a kitchen table one February morning and said, "I can't do this anymore. I can't be the only one here." She had not said it with anger. That was the thing that stayed with him. She had said it with a tiredness that went all the way down, and he had known she was right. He had been present for so little of Lily's life by then, physically present, in the house, in the room, that he could not argue with her. He signed the papers. He came home. He took Lily every other week at first, then more, then most of the time as Diane's work moved her across the country, and they worked out, slowly and without drama, what was best for Lily. What was best for Lily, it turned out, was Marcus. Not because Diane was not a good mother. She was, but Lily had inherited her father's stillness, his patience, his preference for quiet over noise. She liked to watch things before she joined them. She liked to understand something before she spoke about it. She was the only 6-year-old Marcus had ever met who could sit in comfortable silence without fidgeting. She got that from him. He took the delivery job because the schedule was his own, mostly, because he could be at school pickup every day, because the work made sense to him in a way that required no explanation. You picked something up. You took it somewhere. You put it in someone's hands. Done. He had spent years in a world of complexity and ambiguity, where nothing was certain and outcomes were never clean. There was something deeply satisfying about a world where the job was simply completed or not completed. He was very good at completing it. His manager, a man named Dale who had been running the local depot for 11 years, had tried twice to promote Marcus to a supervisory role. Marcus had turned it down both times. Dale thought it was modesty. It wasn't. It was the simple fact that Marcus did not want to spend his days behind a desk. He wanted to drive. He wanted the city. He wanted to be the one in the street, not the one in the office watching other people be in the street. Dale had stopped offering after the second time, but he made sure Marcus got the best routes, the ones with the most stops, the ones that paid better per hour because of the volume. It was his way of showing that he had noticed something. He couldn't name exactly what he had noticed, only that Marcus Cole was not entirely what he appeared to be. Most people who met Marcus had that feeling. They just didn't know what to do with it. The men at the cafe had that feeling on the day he looked at them. They had covered it immediately, the way people cover things that make them uncertain, with noise and performance, and another round of coffee. But it had been there. That slight shift, that half-second of something moving across the face of the man with the loud laugh. Recognition, not of who Marcus was, but of what Marcus was. The body knew, even when the mind was busy pretending it didn't. The body always knows. Marcus had learned that in a world where pretending was not an option, where the body's knowledge was often the difference between going home and not going home. He carried that knowledge now into parking lots and apartment lobbies and front doorsteps. He carried it into cafes where certain men sat too wide in their chairs and said things designed to make other people feel small. And every time, without exception, it came to the same conclusion. He was not small. He had never been small. He was the quietest, most specifically trained, most deliberately composed person in any room he entered. And he had made the deliberate choice, every single day, to use none of that in any way that would make the newspapers. To use all of it, instead, in the service of a 6-year-old girl who drew things that made no logical sense and was somehow always exactly right. That was the choice he had made. Eyes open. No regrets. On the Thursday of the week after the men were asked to leave the cafe, Marcus walked into Lily's classroom at 9 in the morning. He was in clean clothes. He had moved 3 deliveries to the afternoon to make it work. Lily was standing at the front of the room beside a large piece of paper taped to the whiteboard. On it she had painted, in bright and unapologetic color, a figure in a brown jacket with a pink lunchbox in one hand and a thermal bag over the other shoulder. She had written, in her careful 6-year-old letters at the bottom of the painting, "My dad." The teacher started to introduce her. Lily stepped forward before the introduction was finished, pointed at the painting, looked out at her classmates and said, "This is my dad. He brings my lunch when I forget it. He's always there at 3:15. He never misses." Marcus stood at the back of the room. His hands were clasped in front of him. His face was doing something that the people who knew him would have said they had never seen it do before. He was not still. He was not composed. He was just a man watching his daughter tell 22 6-year-olds about the most important thing in her world. And the most important thing in her world was him. The painting came home that afternoon, rolled up carefully under Lily's arm. She had carried it the entire length of the school hall and all the way to the van without bending a corner, which Marcus noted with the kind of quiet pride that doesn't need to be spoken. He put it on the kitchen counter when they got home. She watched him unroll it and smooth it flat with his palms. She said, "Are you going to put it up?" He looked at it, at the brown jacket, at the pink lunchbox with the cartoon rabbit, which she had painted in careful detail. He said, "Where do you think it should go?" She thought about this seriously, the way she thought about all important decisions. She walked through the kitchen into the living room, stood in the center of the room, turned slowly, and pointed at the wall above the television. He said, "That's the best spot in the house." She said, "I know." He put it up that night, after she was in bed. He used 2 nails and a level because the painting deserved to be straight. He stepped back and looked at it for a long time. Brown jacket, pink lunchbox, letters at the bottom. My dad. He went to bed, slept 6 hours straight, which was the best sleep he had gotten in 2 months. In the morning, Lily walked into the living room, looked at the wall, and nodded like someone reviewing completed work and finding it acceptable. Then she went to get her backpack. Marcus made her lunch. He put the pink lunchbox in her bag. He drove her to school. He was back at the depot by 8:15, van loaded, route planned, first stop 11 minutes away. He drove. The city moved around him the way it always did, loud and layered and indifferent to any single person in it. But Marcus was not indifferent to it. He noticed everything, the way he always had. The shortcut on Larkin, the traffic pattern near the underpass on Wednesdays, the elderly man on the 4th floor of the building on Green Street, who was always at the window when Marcus came up, who had started waving. Marcus waved back now, every time. It had become something between them, small and wordless and reliable. That was the thing about Marcus Cole that the men in the cafe had not understood, and perhaps could not have understood. It was not that he was trained. It was not the service record in the folder with the commendations on it. It was not the particular skills he had that most people in that cafe would not have believed if told about them. It was that he had decided, every day, what to do with himself. He had decided to be reliable, to be present, to show up exactly when and where he said he would, to carry the things that needed carrying, to be the person whose name, when it came up, made other people feel certain instead of uncertain. He had built that life deliberately, one day at a time, one delivery at a time, one 3:15 pickup at a time. And no one at a cafe table, with their blazers and their loud laughs and their watches that caught the light, had the power to touch a single part of it. Not because Marcus was beyond being hurt. He was not. He was a person. He had bad days. He had evenings when the house was too quiet, and the fatigue went too deep, and the weight of doing everything alone pressed down harder than usual. But he had Lily's painting above the television. And he had 3:15. And he had the certainty, bone deep and unshakable, that he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The man with the loud laugh went back to his life. So did the man with the blazer. So did the man with the watch. They told the story among themselves for a few days, the version where they were not the ones who had been asked to leave, the version that made them the people who had simply decided to go elsewhere. People do that. They rewrite the parts that don't fit the image they have of themselves. Marcus did not think about them. He thought about whether Lily would want pasta or rice for dinner. He thought about the delivery on Sacramento Street where the intercom was broken and he always had to call ahead. He thought about the school trip next month that he had already requested the day off for. He thought about the painting on the wall. He thought about the letters at the bottom, painted in careful and unapologetic color. My dad. He pulled up to the next address, grabbed the package, walked to the door, rang the bell. Someone answered. He smiled, said good afternoon, handed over the package. Walked back to the van. Next stop. That was the story. Not a story of confrontation or victory in any way that movies understand. Not a story of the moment where the underestimated man reveals himself and the bullies shrink away in recognition of how wrong they were. It was quieter than that, truer than that. It was the story of a man who had already won, who had won before he walked into that cafe, who carried his winning not in the way he stood, or the way he spoke, or the way he eventually looked at the men who mocked him. He carried it in a pink lunchbox with a cartoon rabbit on the front. He carried it in a painting above a television. He carried it at 3:15, every day, no exceptions. The door of the cafe on Clement Street opened and closed for the rest of that afternoon. People came in. People left. Claire served coffee and wiped down the counter. Stavros went back to his invoices. The table in the center stayed empty until 2:30, when a mother and her teenage son came in and sat down with 2 hot chocolates and a shared piece of cake, talking quietly about something that made the mother laugh and the son roll his eyes and then smile despite himself. It was a good table, actually, in good light, near enough to the window to see the street but not so close that the afternoon sun hit your eyes. It just needed the right people in it. Outside, Marcus Cole's white van moved through the city, steady, unhurried, exactly on schedule. The afternoon opened up ahead of him, and he drove straight into it.